Hi and welcome to Different Leaf, a show for new and experienced cannabis consumers. I'm Britt Smith. This episode, we're going to talk about the role cannabis and CBD played in the survival story of a true survivor in every way, Ethan Zohn. Ethan grew up in Massachusetts and went on to play professional soccer on teams in Hawaii, Massachusetts, and Zimbabwe. After years of being a professional goalie, Ethan competed on and won Survivor Africa, the third season of the reality TV show Survivor. In case you haven't seen it, Survivor is kind of a social experiment show where about 20 contestants are willingly deserted on an island with really only the clothes on their back and a production crew nearby. They're divided into tribes and they have to survive in the wilderness together and take part in challenges for immunity and rewards. The last one standing gets $1 million, and Ethan was the survivor of 2003. That year, he took his prize money and launched a non-profit called Grassroots Soccer, a program that uses soccer to raise money and awareness in the fight against the AIDS epidemic in Africa. From his win in 2003 until 2009, Ethan was thriving. He was appearing on a long list of reality TV competition shows. He was hosting a travel show called Earth Tripping. He was commentating on soccer on ESPN. And then, in early 2009, at age 35, Ethan was diagnosed with a rare form of blood cancer. After several rounds of radiation and chemotherapy, Ethan was fortunate enough to beat it, and when it returned a few years later, he beat it again. Like I said, a true survivor. That was over a decade ago. Now, as a cancer survivor and a lifelong athlete, Ethan is singing the praises of cannabis and CBD for its healing properties, and he's on a mission to ease some of the stigma around using the plant for medicine. Today, Ethan's going to open up about his experience as a young cancer patient finding and using cannabis as a medicine back in 2009. We'll also talk about how edibles helped him during tough bouts of chemo and how CBD helped with his mental health in the years after he went into remission. Then we'll talk about how he uses the plant now to prep, perform, and recover from marathon runs, including how he ran the Boston Marathon openly high last year. And we'll talk about what he's doing to help cancer and cannabis research and to help patients get better medical marijuana guidance. We'll be right back to hear the inspirational story of the ultimate survivor, Ethan Zohn. Ethan, it's so nice to meet you, and thank you so much for joining me today.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So not only are you a survivor winner, but also a cancer survivor. So we're going to talk about surviving in general today and how cannabis has played a part in that part of your life. Let's go back to high school. You're from Lexington, Mass. You're a local guy for us. We're from Massachusetts as well. We're based out here.
All right. Yeah. The mean streets of Lexington, Massachusetts. Yeah.
That's your hood. Okay. So that's why you started playing soccer, right? I'm going to call it soccer. I would call it football, but just for the Americans out there, I'll call it soccer.
I appreciate that. But as we know right now, we got the Women's World Cup, which is going on right now in Australia and New Zealand. And it's been pretty exciting. I've been staying up extremely late to watch the games, waking up early to watch even more games. I'm so dedicated.
You're dedicated. So that's where the interest in soccer started for you. How did you get into professional soccer?
Well, I guess my interest in soccer started, I have two older brothers, and they would just stick me in the backyard and then just like blast soccer balls at my face when I was growing up. So instinctively, I became a goalkeeper. So I was always playing with like an older group of people because I got two older brothers. So I did pretty well. I played all through middle school, high school. I went on to play in college. And then after college, I never had any intentions of playing professional soccer, to be honest.
No.
Because I studied pre-med and marine biology. So after college, I moved to Hawaii. I'm like, oh my God, there's a lot of water here. I'm bound to find a job in marine biology while I studied for the MCATs. But then there was an advertisement in the local paper for a new professional soccer team called the Hawaii Tsunami. And so I'm like, all right. So I showed up for a walk-on tryout and I made it. And I was like, okay, screw med school. I'm going to play soccer for the rest of my life.
Wow. That's kind of a lot of people's dreams. That's incredible. So big shout out to your brothers for putting you on the track
Yeah.
to be a goalie, I guess. And once you played a couple of years of professional soccer, you'd moved around a lot. There was Zimbabwe, back here to Cape Cod. You eventually moved on to Survivor. I've watched a couple of seasons of this show. It's insane. What in the world made you want to get on Survivor?
Well, I guess I was in between life choices. My mom would like to say I was unemployed, but I say, Mom, listen, I was just in between life choices. I'm just trying to figure things out.
Yeah.
But my playing career was spiraling out of control. I had moved back from Zimbabwe, where I was playing in the Zimbabwe Premier League, to play here in the United States. Got cut from a few teams. I got a full-time job in New York City as a nomenclature, which means I named new products that were coming out on the market. And then like about a week before I was supposed to actually start my full-time job, they had a hiring freeze. And I was like, what am I going to do now? And I looked at my roommate in New York City. I'm like, hey, want to make a video for Survivor? He's like, sure, why not? It, like literally we were unemployed, had nothing to do. It occupied a day in New York City. And so there may or may not have been some alcohol involved. I don't know, but we ran around the city for a day. We filmed a video for Survivor and we just sent it in. And this was on VHS. So like we stayed up all night on 2 VCRs, making a VHS audition tape. Then we sent it in and just hope for the best.
Again, a dedicated man. Oh my gosh, back in the day with the VHS.
Right.
What was that, 2001 that you were on Survivor Africa?
Exactly. Survivor Africa was 2001. It was the third installment of Survivor.
And then you went on to, in the next few years, you were on All Stars and then you were on The Wars. And it was just sort of like, it really took over a lot of your time in life. So I guess a lot of your early 2000s, like late 90s, early 2000s were really about being healthy and sporty and fit and active, right?
100%. Back in the day, you know, so this was reality TV was kind of just starting. Survivor was one, if not the biggest reality show on the air at the time. And we were averaging 27 to 30 million viewers a week. And so when you get off a show like Survivor and you do pretty well, there's a lot of opportunity in a good way. So I just said yes to everything. I was on Fear Factor, Amazing Race, game shows. I actually got a job broadcasting for Major League Soccer and ESPN. So I was able to leverage my time on the show Survivor and kind of just pursue things that I've always wanted to do, but just never had the time or money, you know, to do it. And luckily, winning $1 million, you kind of have a little bit of a break, you know, from that, and you can kind of pursue things that that you may or may not have had the opportunity to do before. So yeah, I just said yes to everything. And I did a lot of good reality. I also might have done a lot of bad reality, but we don't like to talk about those things.
You don't want to tell us your favorite and your least favorite by any chance?
Well, I was on a show called Kill Reality, which was not the highlight of my reality TV career. And we'll just leave it at that.
All right, good to know. I'm going to find that video.
Yes, you are.
One of the things that you also did after Survivor was to start a nonprofit, the grassroots soccer nonprofit. Why was this such an important thing for you to get involved in?
It stemmed back from my time before the TV show Survivor. So like I said, I had the opportunity to play professional soccer in Zimbabwe for a team called the Highlanders Football Club, and we played in the Zimbabwe Premier League. And while I was there, I just witnessed firsthand what was happening with HIV and AIDS and how it was just destroying this community that I was now a part of. And I had friends on my team that got sick with HIV, kicked off the team, and lived the end of their life in a really horrible, lonely kind of way. And at that time in my life, I didn't really know what I could do about it, right? Like, what can one person do to help this massive problem in all of Africa? So to be honest, I didn't do anything. I sheltered. I said, it's not my problem. Someone else will deal with it. It's in a land far away. Well, like I said, I got back to the US. Fast forward a couple of years, I go on the TV show Survivor. And while I was on the show Survivor, I actually won a reward challenge. And I won these 2 goats, which I wasn't so happy about. But I got to take these goats to this little village of Wamba. And before I left this village of Wamba, I was hanging out in the parking lot of Wamba Hospital. And all these little Kenyan children came out and they're touching my skin and playing with my hair like they'd never seen anyone like me before. And I busted out a little mini soccer ball, a hacky sack. And we just start playing and we're laughing and smiling, connecting through the sport that we both love and a language that we understand. And before I left, I asked one of the nurses at the hospital, why are all these kids just hanging out in the parking lot of a hospital? And she said, well, these are the kids that are HIV positive. And so like, here I was, you know, in the middle of this like this game, right? This cutthroat game of Survivor, and had that real life experience. And so I was like, if things go my way and I get back, I'm going to do something good with this money. And it did. I got back from the show. I got $1 million in my pocket. I had this, platform all of a sudden. So I worked with some of my soccer buddies, and we created this organization called Grassroots Soccer. And Grassroots Soccer is an adolescent health organization that uses the power of soccer to help kids make smarter decisions in life and, not contract HIV. And so we're in about 60 countries, and we put 18 million kids through the program.
Wow.
2003. Yeah.
Ethan, good human alert.
I know.
Wow. What a thing. Like when somebody comes across money, you always hope, I hope they do something really good with it. That is something really good and deep in your heart as well. Like you were really sticking to what matters to you.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
So you're doing all this amazing stuff, and you've got this new opportunity, and you're commenting on soccer on ESPN, and gosh, things are really going for you. And let's talk about what happened to you in 2009 when you had this rare cancer diagnosis. What was that experience for you at first?
At first, I really didn't know what was going on. I was training for the New York City Marathon. I was 35 years old and on top of the world, healthy, happy, fit, young guy, right? And I had some really itchy skin. And I tried every pill, cream, potion, lotion known to man. And it wasn't until a swollen lymph node popped out of my neck, and they found a 6 centimeter by 12 centimeter mass in my chest. And I was diagnosed with a rare form of blood cancer called CD20 positive Hodgkin's lymphoma. And so went through multiple rounds of chemotherapy, 22 blasts of radiation, and 2 stem cell transplants.
Wow.
And so it was a very challenging time in my life.
Yeah.
And luckily I had an incredible, support system around me. And I had obviously incredible doctors that were taking care of me at Memorial Sloan Kettering Hospital in New York City. And then I also kind of did a lot of stuff on my own. I did some alternative therapies. I was exercising through it all. And so I just think I had a good combination to kind of get through this tough challenge battle with cancer.
And after several months of radiation, which is incredibly painful and intense on the body, you get another round, and you're told, we've got to keep going. What did it feel like to you, knowing that this was sort of for the foreseeable future, this was your fight?
What ended up happening is I went through chemoradiation. I had an autologous stem cell transplant. Those are the type of transplants where you use your body's own stem cells. And things were great. I was in remission. The doctors were pumped. I was happy. I got my life back in order. I went and played the amazing race. However, when I got back, about 20 months later, I relapsed. So the cancer came back. And so getting the news that the cancer returned was deflating. It was exponentially more difficult than the first. And because I was running out of options and I was scared, I pissed off, and I didn't want to die. And it was at that time, thank God, that a new smart targeted therapy emerged in the market and was available for a select group of people in my exact situation. So I got on this drug that wasn't even passed by the FDA yet, and it got my cancer to remission so I could get a second stem cell transplant where I used my brother Lee as the donor. So I've actually officially changed my name. My name is now Lethan. And I'm no longer my mom's favorite son, which is the worst part about this whole thing. But, it's really hard to articulate what it feels like to be seriously ill. It pays to have a positive outlook, but when your entire team of doctors try multiple ways of healing you that don't work, you panic. You freak out. All I craved was survival. And it was a really difficult time, and I was plagued with anxiety and fear of relapse. I like to call them the what if scenarios. What if the cancer comes back? What if my chemo doesn't work? What if I don't get married? What if I find a job? What if I get life insurance, health insurance, have babies? All these things are going through your mind as a young adult facing cancer. Mm-hmm. The young adult community has a different perspective on being a survivor. Pediatrics, they got their parents and they're taken care of. They don't really have to think much. Older adults, maybe they're they got health insurance, life insurance, job, wife, all that stuff. But when you're a young adult and you survive cancer, you have your whole life in front of you. You got to pick up the pieces. And, it's you press pause on your life and all your other friends are just starting theirs. And it's a really lonely and isolating and scary feeling.
So it wasn't just that you were able to use cannabis during the chemo treatments to help with that nausea, that pain, and as you said, the skin pain that you were going through. I know my mother went through radiation. I know that the skin is there's some sort of effect that happens to your skin, and it's very, very sore all of the time. So I imagine that it was very helpful during chemo. But now you're talking about